Hello and welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Here's a quick look at what's lined up for you on the show tonight. Our cover story tonight is about the Russia-Ukraine war. Has Ukraine slipped into a total war where no rules apply? Are all rules off the table? Was the dam tragedy planned? And does this set a dangerous precedent? And what does this really mean for the conflict? Where are things headed? All this and more coming up shortly. Also on the show for you tonight, we get you the story of Mumbai's barbaric butcher. How can someone be so barbaric? And how can love turn into such murderous hate? We get you the complete story. Is Meta promoting child pornography? And who is going to hold the tech giant accountable? As Israel-Palestine tensions escalate further, are they back to a state of perpetual war? We tell you all about the Grand Royal Circus. Has Prince Harry trapped himself in his own testimony? Has he scored a self-goal? Bizarre footage emerges from Canada where women were apparently seen eating deer carcass. We tell you more. Has Ukraine slipped into a total war? A no-holds-barred form of warfare where every action is acceptable, where every target is legitimate. The scale of destruction is starting to become clear. In some places, scores of mines have been uprooted by the floodwaters. The Red Cross, in fact, saying this could pose a grave danger to civilians for years to come. And in other places, rescue workers are facing intense shelling. In fact, earlier today, at least 3 people were wounded in Russian shelling as they were trying to evacuate people from Kherson. Not just that, floodwaters have also engulfed towns on both sides of the Dnipro River. In some places, the flooding is so severe that people are living on their rooftops. And the deluge has also left thousands without access to clean drinking water and swamped tens of thousands of hectares of agricultural land. When the floods subside, these lands risk becoming deserts. And why is that? Because the water is polluted. Ukraine says 150 tons of machine oil has already leaked into the Dnipro. And there is a risk that another 300 tons could further pollute the river. And this could spark a large-scale humanitarian and environmental disaster across southern Ukraine. Aren't all of these signs of a total war? A war where everything is off the table? You see, until now, this war was said to be a military operation where both sides target each other's military installations, not civilian infrastructure. The destruction of the dam, the critical dam in Ukraine, has changed this.
It kind of marks a turning point in a sense that now that Ukraine has begun its counteroffensive, and it will be remembered most likely was this first kind of intentional, by whatever side, destruction of critical civilian infrastructure. Because so far there have been many incidents, but this is a major one.
You see, it marks a major violation of the Geneva Convention. The Geneva Convention and additional protocols shaped by international courts say that parties involved in a military conflict must distinguish between civilian objects and military objectives. The protocols explicitly ban wartime attacks on civilian installations containing dangerous forces, like hydroelectric dams, due to the risk posed to civilians. And this prohibition in the convention has been sent for a toss. In fact, why just the Geneva Convention? In recent months, every other convention has also been broken by both sides. The breaches started with the explosion of the Crimean Bridge. On the 8th of October last year, it witnessed a massive explosion. The bridge's two-lane vehicular spans collapsed into the water. And who did this? All evidence pointed towards Ukraine. And why did it blow up the bridge, if it did? To prevent Russian troops from advancing into Ukraine. But wasn't that also an attack on civilian infrastructure? And a month before this, in September 2022, the Nord Stream natural gas pipelines were bombed, rendering most of the gas supply from Russia to Germany ineffective. And who blew up these pipelines? Well, the perpetrators' identities and the motive behind the sabotage remain debated. But most investigations and documents have hinted towards the involvement of Ukraine. In fact, 2 days back, this report emerged. It said that leaked Pentagon papers suggest that it was Ukraine that sabotaged the line. A group of investigators in Germany have reiterated these claims. They have even identified 6 Ukrainian individuals who carried out the attack. Wasn't this also a violation of the Geneva Convention? And shouldn't Ukraine be held accountable for this? We are in June 2023 now. The Nova Kakhova dam has been destroyed. Ukraine wants the dam's destruction to be investigated as a war crime, and it is blaming the destruction on quote-unquote Russian terrorists. But did the Russians really do it? The Kremlin, you see, is accusing Kiev of deliberately sabotaging the dam. And why is that? To distract attention from a purportedly faltering counteroffensive against Russian forces. That's the Russian version. So who is speaking the truth? Who is the real culprit here? Perhaps we'll have to wait for an independent investigation to get us some clarity. But whoever is responsible for the destruction is trying to force the principles of humanity backwards to a point where acts against civilians, acts that can cause indiscriminate and disproportionate damage, become acceptable. And where one such act occurs, others may soon follow. Our next story will leave you frozen in your seats. The level of brutality is absolutely shocking. In India's state of Maharashtra, a 56-year-old man has murdered his live-in partner, and it gets worse. You see, there was no body. The man chopped his partner's body into pieces and boiled them in a pressure cooker. How can someone be this barbaric? And while you digest that fact, let me tell you this. The man lived with the dismembered body for over 2 days. Can you believe that? The police have arrested the murderer and launched an investigation. But who is this barbaric butcher, though? Why did he murder his partner? The person in question is Manoj Sane, a 56-year-old man who was living with his partner in a rented flat in the city of Mumbai. That sounds like a pretty ordinary live-in relationship, right? Yesterday, his 32-year-old partner's body was found in the apartment. This was after neighbors complained of a foul smell coming from the house. And what happened? What did the police find? The police found a decomposed body The body had been cut into several pieces. We are talking about dozens of body parts kept in buckets. The body parts were found in a rather odd place, the kitchen. But why the kitchen? Reports say that Sane boiled the parts after cutting them into 20 pieces, over 20 pieces. The police says that he used an electric cutter and dismembered the body in the bathroom. And there's more. Sane was reportedly seen feeding the body parts to stray dogs. The police thankfully reached before Sane could dispose of all the parts. The authorities found parts of the woman's feet when they entered the flat. The body parts are now going through forensic analysis. Why would anyone commit such a horrific crime? Well, the motive is still unknown, although Sane has admitted that there were instances of domestic violence. Their financial situation was also not stable. Reports say this was a major reason why they used to fight quite often. Such a bone-chilling incident can leave anyone weak in their knees. But the sad part is, such murders are not a one-time occurrence. In fact, earlier in November, the Indian capital witnessed a similar case. A man named Aftab Poonawala was living with his partner. This was yet another live-in relationship. He strangled his partner, chopped her body into over 30 pieces, and spent over 2 months dumping the parts in a forested area. He had stuffed his partner's body in the fridge and reportedly invited another woman into the flat while a dead body was in the house. What really is going on? What is causing such levels of brutality? And why are women being murdered by their partners? How does love turn into murderous hate? In fact, the UN says that over 5 women were killed by a family member every hour in 2021. Reports show that 45,000 women, that's more than half of the total murders in 2021, were killed by their husband or partner in 2022. Experts say that domestic violence is a major cause for the murders. You see, domestic violence is still viewed as a private family matter in many parts of the world. Experts say this deters women from even reporting the cases. And this ends up fostering a culture of impunity that encourages further abuse. In 2021, studies show that Asia had the highest number of female intimate partner killings. Although the numbers are alarmingly high, this of course does not mean that Asia is the only victim. All said and done, such levels of brutality are shocking and leave you wondering, how can someone be so barbaric? We hope that the world does not have to witness such brutal murders anymore. Our next story is about Instagram, the world's 4th biggest social media network with over 2.35 billion active users around the world. But have you ever wondered how many of these users are criminals? Predators use the platform as their playground, hunting for new targets every day. And that's not even the worst part. What's worse is the fact that Instagram itself is giving them a free run. Have a look at this report. It says Instagram algorithms are actively pushing networks of pedophiles, adults or older adolescents who are sexually attracted to prepubescent children. That's right, they are actively thriving on this social media application. These findings are part of a joint investigation by Wall Street Journal and researchers from the Stanford University and the University of Massachusetts. They say Instagram algorithms not only host but also promote a vast pedophile network that advertises illegal child sex material. And how did they actually discover this? To start with, the report claimed to have found that Instagram allowed users to search for explicit hashtags. And these hashtags led them to profiles that featured menus of content pertaining to child sex material for sale. And such accounts frequently claimed to be controlled by children themselves and have explicit sexual handles. Some accounts, in fact, allowed the buyers to commission specific acts, quote unquote, such as children harming themselves. And some accounts allowed them to view children performing sexual acts with animals. And some other accounts also offered to arrange paid meetups. The researchers discovered all of this through test accounts, and every time these test accounts accessed a single such profile promoting pedophilic content, they were bombarded with suggested for you suggestions of alleged child sex content dealers and purchasers. And there were also suggestions of accounts referring to off-platform content trade sites. Following only a few of these recommendations was enough to overwhelm a test account with child sexualizing content. And upon using child sex-related hashtags, the researchers found 405 sellers of self-generated child sex material. 112 of these sellers collectively had 22,000 unique followers. 22,000 of them. The report further suggested that many such accounts were run by children as young as 12. And this is appalling, just to put it mildly. A platform meant to connect people is connecting predators with their prey. And what's worse, this is not happening under the table. Instagram's own algorithms are letting these predators flourish and thrive and continue hunting for their prey. Is Instagram's parent company Meta aware of this? Yes, it is. And what does it say? Well, it says it is setting up an internal task force to address the issues, while acknowledging its failures when it comes to enforcing its own rules violating its policies. Interestingly, this is not the first time Meta has found itself in such a scenario. Just last year, Meta accounted for 85% of 31.9 million reports of child pornography. And you see, these complaints were received by the US National Center for Missing and Exploiting Children. And out of these 31 million complaints, 5 million were about Instagram alone. And then in January this year, Instagram removed 490,000 accounts that violated the child safety regulations. And overall, it has removed 27 pedophile networks in the last 2 years. So you see, Meta is taking action. But the question is, why does this problem still persist? And why can't the company eliminate such accounts from the word go? Why does it wait for these networks to crop up to take action? And above everything else, why are Instagram algorithms even promoting such content? Are we to believe that the company cannot even track the kind of content that its algorithms are pushing? And finally, who is going to hold Meta accountable? On to Canada now. The country is witnessing acres of land going up in ashes as I speak. Authorities are struggling to contain the wildfires across the country. Over 400 fires have burned down nearly 9.8 million acres of forest land. The smoke has now spilled over to the US. Millions have been forced to stay indoors. People are wearing masks to protect themselves from the toxic smoke. Our next report getting you all the details.
The sun getting blocked by heavy smoke. The skyline with a massive cloud of haze. People going about their daily routine with close to zero visibility. This is the life of Canadians right now, threatened by low air quality and wildfires.
I have been coming out on a walk daily in the morning, right? And I have kind of observed that as far as the air quality is concerned, somehow feels that it's not as good as it was.
Canada is fighting an extraordinary battle against wildfires. Blazes have scorched nearly 9.8 million acres of forest cover. This is 10 times the acreage that wildfires burned last year. The nation has had to stretch its firefighting resources. Why? You see, firefighting is managed by a provincial level in Canada. This made coordination difficult. But do you know what is more difficult to contain? The aftermath of the fires. The land getting burned. The smoke. Massive clouds of smoke darkened the skies of Canada and the US. It is not safe for people to walk outside. This is how bad the situation is.
I want to recognize the air quality statements that have been issued by Environment Canada because of wildfire smoke. People across the country are being affected. We're seeing vulnerable people at risk, outdoor events cancelled, kids having to be kept inside at recess.
And now, Americans are choking on the wildfire smoke. This New York City, blanketed in a science fiction-like orange cover. Schools have been closed, Broadway shows cancelled, and even flight schedules have been impacted.
You should remain inside, and if you must go outdoors, wear high-quality masks such as a K95. Our students are in school today, but the Chancellor has canceled all outside events as an abundance of caution.
New York continues to have the worst air quality among many major cities. It even surpassed India's capital, one of the most polluted cities in the world. Experts say that the air quality will remain at the very unhealthy level. The heavy haze has also reduced the visibility. A reduced visibility of less than a mile. The toxic smoke has also led to citizens wearing masks.
I'm wearing my mask mainly because I'm worried about the air quality. I'm worried about breathing in the particles. You know, it's not healthy.
How does wildfire smoke impact humans? You see, our body is vulnerable to air particles smaller than 2.5 micrometers. Such particles can easily enter our lungs. Although the US has observed a reduction in particulate matter lesser than 2.5, the wildfire smoke has started changing the dynamic. The smoke can easily cause an inflammation and toxic buildup in the lungs. Experts suggest buying air purifiers and wearing masks to be safe. New York authorities have also urged citizens to do the same.
To protect people, we believe that the N95 mask is an important way that people can stop the air particles from getting into their lungs. That is why I'm announcing we are making available 1 million N95 masks to be made available at state facilities.
So is it normal for Canada to witness wildfires? Yes. Canada's wildfire season goes on from May through October. But such destruction in early stages of the season is rare. Climate change seems to have caused extreme temperatures. The warm and dry conditions resulted in the wildfires. Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, where fires now rage, were particularly hit hard by droughts. The Canadian Wildland Fire Information System says that the wildfire season has been 13 times worse than the 10-year average. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Our next story is from Israel. Earlier today, it conducted a raid in Ramallah, a Palestinian city in the West Bank. And this raid has once again flared up tensions, with observers warning that the situation could soon spin out of control. Have a look at these visuals. They show the Israeli army detonating the home of a Palestinian assailant. And who was this assailant? The Israeli army saying that he was a terrorist who carried out a bombing in Jerusalem. The mother of the assailant saying that this was an act triggered by hate.
occupation is spiteful and brutal. They don't think through. Seriously, they don't. They carry out such acts and expect people to remain calm. In the contrary, this will fill them with more hatred and rage.
This is an unjust person. They take away our children, kill our youth, and now they have the audacity to come and blow up our homes. It's unfair. This is injustice against us and against the Palestinian people. It has been a long night. From 11 p.m. till the morning, they have been firing tear gas, wounding young men.
And have a look at these visuals now. They show clashes near the raid site, with locals pelting stones on the forces. They also set trash bins on fire to block their movement. And in response, the Israeli forces allegedly fired live bullets, stun grenades, and tear gas at the crowd. And reports say his name is Islam al-Farouk, who is currently being held in an Israeli prison, accused of carrying out a bombing attack in Jerusalem in late November. The explosions were carried out through improvised bombs that were planted at bus stops near the city exit and at a junction leading to a settlement. The bombing killed 2 people, including an Israeli-Canadian teenager. Reports say 14 other people were also severely wounded in the explosion. The culprit is already behind bars, but his punishment does not stop there. Israeli forces have now demolished his house also. They say that this policy of demolishing homes of perpetrators is both punitive and a deterrent to any potential attackers. Only that the demolition did not go as per plan. When the Israeli troops arrived at the raid site, they were met with resistance by the locals. And reports say over 35 people were wounded, including at least 20 by live bullets. 2 people suffered serious abdominal wounds, while a third was hit by a rubber bullet, which penetrated his skull. Visuals going viral online depicting the scale of the confrontation. They show Molotov cocktails being fired in the air. And how should we view this? Where exactly are things headed? And will this latest flare-up trigger more tensions? Are Israel and Palestine back to perpetual war? We will have to wait and watch. Meanwhile, China-Taiwan tensions continue to mount. More than 30 Chinese warplanes entered Taiwan's air defense zone over the course of about 6 hours. The Taiwanese activated defense systems. Our next report telling you what happened.
The tensions are peaking. Beijing's belligerence is once again making Taipei jittery. China isn't hiding its intentions. It claims self-ruled Taiwan as its own territory. It has repeatedly vowed to take it one day, by force if necessary. And force was in full display on Thursday as the Chinese Air Force sent its bombers near Taiwan. One after the other, over 3 dozen Chinese planes flew close to the Taiwanese territory, a sharp ramp-up in single-day incursions by China's military. In total, there were 37 Chinese warplanes, including J-11 and J-16 fighters, as well as nuclear-capable 8-6 bombers. The jets flew over Taiwan's air defense identification zone. Alarmed at such a large number of jets approaching, Taiwanese military activated land-based missile systems. Taiwanese aircraft and ships also went into an alert mode. On Tuesday, Seoul was also rattled in a similar fashion. South Korea scrambled fighter jets. This after 4 Russian and 4 Chinese military aircraft entered its air defense zone. China and Russia were conducting a joint air patrol over the Sea of Japan and East China Sea. But the reasons for the Chinese action near Taiwan are different. Taipei, a day ahead, had said that the United States has an enduring interest in preserving stability in the Taiwan Strait. The Taiwanese government asserts that the United States would continue to arm the island, a source of constant friction in China-US ties. The past week has been quite turbulent. On Saturday, a Chinese warship came within 150 yards of a US destroyer in the Taiwan Strait and forced it to slow down. Beijing is using its growing military capability and economic clout to push back on decades-old US military dominance in Asia. China regards the United States as an outsider interfering in a region in which it sees itself as a force for peace and stability. While Washington vows to keep backing its allies, clearly the tensions are only going to rise in the days ahead. One could only hope that the long-stalled dialogue between the two world powers would resume and soothe the frayed ties. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Fighter aircraft, long and short-range maritime weapons.
The Indian Navy recently completed a successful night landing of the MiG-29K fighter jet on the country's indigenous aircraft carrier. This is a major feat in getting the 40,000-ton aircraft carrier combat ready. And our correspondent Siddharth MP visited India's largest naval air base, INS Hansa in Goa, to get you this exclusive report on the MiG-29K fighter jet and why it is the core of India's naval air combat operations.
Mikoyan Gurevich 29K, abbreviated as MiG-29K, lean and mean, travels almost twice as fast as the speed of sound, carries a wide range of bombs and missiles. In the Indian Navy, they say, there are only 2 types of fighters, MiG-29Ks and targets. These are twin-engine, single-seat, all-weather planes, meant to operate from the decks of aircraft carriers. These supersonic fighters are used to defend the aircraft carrier and its fleet, and also perform strike missions on land and sea-based targets. Fighter aircraft are highly sophisticated machines with thousands of moving parts and ablaze on their tail. Imagine operating more than 24 such aircraft from a ship at sea. It's an art and science by itself, which is why only a handful of nations operate modern aircraft carriers. The carrier-based fighter pilots train for challenging jobs like no other. Their roles are totally different from land-based fighter pilots.
Like when you are carrying out operations on ground, you have a lot of ground features available to you for orientation. There might be some road, some village, some hut, or some distinct feature based on which you can orientate yourself. But when you're flying over the seas, there are no such features available to you. You have to rely completely on the systems. You have to rely on the communication which you're having with the ship. And you have to rely on your other systems, onboard systems, based on which you can carry out an approach and landing on board the carrier. And unlike a runway, which is a steady platform available to us, the ship is continuously rolling, pitching, and it is continuously moving as well. So all those factors need to be catered for when you are making approach for a deck. So that is why it is quite challenging.
For a host of reasons, ship-based fighters are designed and built differently from their land-based counterparts. Carrier-borne fighters operate in environments with high salinity, face a high risk of corrosion and rust, brave storms and adverse weather at sea, and have to be able to land and take off from short carrier decks that are barely 200 meters long. That's 1/10 the length of a conventional runway. That's why the MiG-29K is built the way it is.
We are looking at the MiG-29K carrier-based fighter aircraft. This is the Russian origin aircraft, which is the mainstay of Indian Navy's carrier-based fighter fleet. The K in MiG-29K stands for Korabelny. It's a Russian word which means ship-based. Of course, this is also an aircraft that operates with the Indian Air Force, but the K variant is specifically for the Navy. We'll show you around and we'll also give you some context into why this aircraft is a K variant and what makes the K variant special. Korabelny means ship-based. So here to store on the ship's deck, on the aircraft carrier's deck and in the hangars, you have this particular foldable wing, which is actually a feature which makes this aircraft easier to store. And particularly when you talk about the aircraft's engines and when you talk about the other features, this one features more powerful engines. The engines on board this one are the RD-33 Klimov engines, MK engines, RD-33 MK Klimov engines. These are much more powerful than the other variants of MiG-29 engines, primarily because they have to develop more thrust in a very short duration. And one of the most special features of this aircraft is this tail hook. You don't find this elsewhere. The tail hook is primarily meant to latch on to the arrestor wires on the carrier, and that is how this aircraft is brought to a halting stop in just a matter of 2 seconds. And that is the most precise aspect of this kind of aircraft. One other aspect about this 29K variant is that the undercarriage of the aircraft is extremely strong and much more stronger than the conventional variants, mainly because this has to handle the landings and the stress of the landings on an aircraft carrier deck. With video journalist Sujoy, Siddharth MP, WION World is One from INS Hansa.
Our next story is bizarre to say the least, and will leave you scratching your heads, wondering what's really going on. It's a story from Canada and has left people around the world shocked. Coronia Stanhope is a 36-year-old nature lover and lives in Powell River, British Columbia. She came across a deer carcass. This was in a garden on her property. And she and her grandfather decided to place a camera there, to see if they could spot animals. But they were in for a shock. They captured some footage and happened to spot something absolutely weird that freaked them out. What did they see? Apparently, women eating the deer carcass. You heard that right. They did not seem to have clothes on. Were they really eating the carcass? It's difficult to tell from the photos. They were kissing it or maybe smelling it or eating it. But the very fact that they were touching the decaying carcass and they were that close to the carcass is absolutely bizarre in itself. Stanhope shared the images online and naturally they went viral. What really happened? Who were these women? And why were they doing what they were doing? Is it some ritual that they were performing? As of now, there are no answers to these questions. Don't ever take sides against the family. You must remember this dialogue from the movie The Godfather. Does this also apply to Prince Harry, who has been caught in a trap of his own making, according to many? Did he score a self-goal? Our next report getting you the complete story.
Sourcing, suspicion and speculation. These were the words often used by Prince Harry in the courtroom. Harry recently became the first senior royal to testify in court in over 130 years. But why did he land up in a courtroom? It all started with the Mirror Group newspapers. Newspapers including the Daily Mail, Sunday Mirror and The People covered various parts of the Duke's life over a nearly 15 years period. Now Prince Harry has accused the publishers for illegally sourcing stories. He says that they hacked his phone to get information. What is interesting is that the Duke was supposed to give proof-backed testimonies. But when asked about numerous articles that offended him, the Duke was unable to remember the dates of the articles. As far as the phone hacking claim is concerned, when the questioner pulled out the specifics of the case, proof showed that there was no call data between the royal's phone and a journalist. Prince Harry said that the hacking must have been at an industrial scale, and ended up saying that it would be injustice if his claim was not true. He did not stop there. Harry went on to attack the media with statements like, "Democracy fails when your press fails to scrutinize. I believe the press has hit rock bottom." What did the MGN group have to say about this? The publisher said that Prince Harry has no evidence or not sufficient evidence. You see, Prince Harry claims that the publishers either hacked devices or carried out surveillance. He says that MGN hides its illegal acts by not naming sources. But studies show otherwise. Studies say that since the time when the royals did not have a press office, it accepted practice that journalists would not name sources. After all, these sources play a key role in royal reporting, but prefer to remain anonymous for privacy reasons. The cross-examination questions to Prince Harry saw responses like, "I don't know, I don't remember, I have no idea." The Duke's allegations are fiery, but has he trapped himself and scored a self-goal? Pure Report, WION, World is One.
And one of the world's most active volcanoes has erupted once again, spewing lava and lighting up the sky in Hawaii. The eruption could also produce a phenomenon called Pele's hair. These are tiny slivers of volcanic glass that can be irritating to the exposed skin and can cause eye issues. Let's now tell you what else made news around the world. Time for Gravitas Global Headlines.
At least 4 children and 1 adult was left injured in a mass stabbing incident in a French town. The assailant has been overpowered. Pope Francis is in a good condition after his first night in the hospital following an abdominal surgery. Doctors say the results of the first post-operation tests are good and that there will be no limitations on his travels once he recovers. U.S. suspends food aid to Ethiopia, saying its donations were being diverted from people in need. Aid agency USAID says deliveries would resume only after it regained confidence in the integrity of the system. India's central bank has kept its key lending rate steady for a second straight policy meeting as it looks to assess the impact of past rate increases amid slowing inflation. Kremlin says Odessa ammonium pipeline blast could hit talks to extend the Black Sea grain deal, says resumption of pipelines work was an integral part of agreement. Monsoon rains reach Indian state of Kerala after a week's delay. Monsoons deliver nearly 70% of rain that India needs to water farms and recharge reservoirs. The northern Peruvian city of Piura has become the epicenter of the largest dengue epidemic in the country's history. Houses and streets of the neighborhoods were being fumigated in an attempt to stop the spread of the disease. U.S. scientists confirmed that the El Niño weather warming phase has begun. U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration says it is likely to push the world past a key 1.5 degrees warming milestone. Japan's Miyakato scripted a tale of redemption after being kicked out of the women's doubles by clinching the French Open mixed doubles crown alongside Germany's Tim Puetz. The duo saw off Canadian-Kiwi pairing of Bianca Andreescu and Michael Bennis. The Denver Nuggets have taken a 2-1 series lead in the NBA Finals after a 109-94 win over the Miami Heat in Game 3. Nikola Jokic and Kamal Murray both posted triple-doubles in Miami. The Nuggets are now 2 wins away from their first ever championship.
On that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas tonight. We are leaving you with Gravitas images. Thanks very much for watching.
بكل تأكيد هناك بعض التجارب